Offensive line for the New Orleans Saints for 3 years, from 1986 through 1988. Of course, he was a star at Ole Miss and was part of the first winning season and first playoff appearance in New Orleans Saints history back in 1987. He was an all-USFL player before coming to the Saints with the Philadelphia and Baltimore Stars. Saints, of course, lost to Dallas last night, 38-17, 1-3 on the year. They'll host Tampa Bay this coming Sunday in the Dome at noon. Please give a warm quarterback club welcome to Chuck Commiskey. Chuck.
Good afternoon. I had a date last night, and I had it all planned out. I thought it was going to go great. It included the Saints offense, and that pretty much summed up my date. I preface this little speech I'm up here talking with the fact that it's from an offensive lineman's perspective. The coaches over here, I'm sure, can get a chuckle when they hear some of my words of wisdom. You know, I just think we don't have an identity, and we don't have any intensity. And it's like everybody's looking around the sideline and out on the field, and they're waiting for somebody to flip a switch. And these coaches to my right know what I'm talking about when I say it don't work like that. And, you know, it's all right. It's never all right for the coaches. But from a player's perspective, it's all right if you experience something like that in one quarter or one half or possibly even one game. But this seems to be going on now for 4 weeks, basically. I don't see a lot of mental sharpness nor mental toughness out of our Saints. And I'm not here to beat the Saints up. I love the Saints. I got a picture when I was 11 years old in a Saints t-shirt that Dell Williams, the first right guard the Saints ever had, gave to me. These are observations from an offensive line. Keep that in mind. Our offense doesn't have any identity. We're in an identity crisis, to me. I mean, Drew Brees, without a doubt, would be one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the league. We sometimes have a good running game. We sometimes don't. We sometimes have we can stretch the field. Sometimes we can't even get off the line of scrimmage. I just, offensive linemen, I always think we ought to run the dang ball. All right? And every offensive lineman around, I'm sure these coaches will chuckle at this, think on 2nd and 10, we need to run the toss sweep. I don't care how fast that outside linebacker is, I know we can get out there and get on the corner. And then when it's 4th and 2, I want you to run it right behind me, coach. Right here. Doesn't matter that they've got 5 guys in this hole. I want you to put it right back here. And I just don't see a lot of that intensity. And having said that, I don't see us focused on anything. We seem to stop and start. Great running back, or just good running backs, run the ball, and the more they run the ball, they're like thoroughbred horses. The faster they get, the harder they run, the more intense they get in, they finish their runs. That's enthusiasm. That brings linemen because they get embarrassed because they're not out front helping him. That picks them up, they get down the field, they hustle. I didn't see any of that last night. And unfortunately, I did see a lot of that from Dallas Cowboys offensive line. Our offensive linemen just seem to be flat. This is just my opinion. It's not worth a lot. But our defensive line they don't disengage. They don't redirect. I mean, we had a defensive front that was not Hall of Fame guys were good players when I was with the Saints. Jimmy Wilkes was not a big guy. I mean, if you were going to mash him up just straight ahead, block, he really couldn't take you on. But Jimmy never took you on. He was smart enough to know that. He was working his hands. He was working the edge. He was punching. He was, and he did all the little tricks. And basically, to me, it appeared last night that we did nothing more than almost fit up for the Saturday morning walkthrough. I just, other observations, I think because of that lack of identity, we ought to focus on the run. I mean, we ought to run the ball until they stop us on the run. And a lot of people say, well, they did stop us. I said, well, but to run the ball, you got to pound it. You got to know that you're not going to score a touchdown on every play. You're not even going to score, you're not even going to gain 2 or 3 yards on some plays. But it's a work ethic, it's a mentality, it's an intensity that I guarantee you DeMarco Murray had last night, and that was very evident as he ran against our defense. Here I'm sure all 3 coaches are going to cringe. I think they ought to change their scheme and just run the dang ball and run the ball and run the ball till everybody forgets about us passing the ball. I also think maybe when we do that, we also ought to give our wide receivers a ball to carry around with them all the time. That's kind of old school. Maybe, see how difficult it is to cash a check or hold a date. That might motivate. Anyway, my suggestions, I think, would be Rob Ryan need to either go with the ponytail or borrow some Gregory beads from Bobby Hebert's daddy. Greg McMahon needs to burn every fake in the playbook. Sean Payton ought to run the football until Mark Ingram comes back. And after my display here, I'm sure you can tell I'm highly under and really not qualified to talk about football, but if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
What I noticed is how undisciplined they are. This might be the most undisciplined team in the Sean Payton era. And I think it actually goes back to the training camp where they were all talking about how great the weather was and how they were playing golf and all that kind of stuff. So personally, I think they should come back down to South Louisiana and heat and get that discipline going in the training camp. But my question is, can they possibly get more disciplined in the middle of the year?
Sure they can. I mean, coaching things, the things I was talking about coaching-wise, like I don't see them hustling, offensive linemen, hustling downfield. We had backup offensive linemen, as soon as the ball was released, this is in practice, as soon as the ball was released, they start yelling, ball, ball, ball. And every one of the offensive linemen that were in that play had to hustle down the field at least 10 yards. That trains it. After a while, I coached the offensive line at a Catholic high school in Mobile, and I was teaching the kids on the board the steps. And all these coaches know what I'm talking about, the steps. You're going down the board. And they started complaining one day, and I was like, you don't understand something. That's the discipline of the game. I did it when I was in 3rd grade, except for we didn't have rubber ones. We had 2x6s, and you twisted your ankle if you didn't stay off the square. It just, I blame it on where they're at. And I don't know if it's the relationship, familiarity breeds contempt. The coaches and the players have been together for so long. Maybe they're making too much money, I don't know. But I definitely feel like that, I don't think, they're professionals. And they wouldn't be where they are today if they didn't have that capacity. Sometimes that's what, I go back to the beginning of my talk about the light switch. Sometimes people get too comfortable and they just assume the good stuff is going to happen. And, sometimes it doesn't. You have to write it. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's.
Luckily for me, I did not have to watch most of the game last night. I was flying back from Georgia. I have already expressed to Mr. Loomis my contention on running the ball game, running. That there would have been 3 victories if they'd run 2 more running plays. But I don't see that the defense is doing anything at all in trying to tackle. I have not seen anybody that's out there with that much intensity, because it's like, oh, here he comes, let me grab him, and he's gone. I mean, they just don't seem to be. I got to watch running the ball on Saturday. Run the ball. I graduated from the University of Georgia, and I got to see Burley. And yes, we ran the ball. So yes, I agree. Run the damn ball.
Well,
until you get stopped.
I'm going to refer to the beautiful lady in the red shirt.
Getting rid of Sproles and Jenkins had something to do with the chemistry, because they're just excelling in Philadelphia. When they get rid of Sproles, they seem like taking the heart out of the team. With the fans, I don't know, the team.
Well, I mean,
I agree with what you're saying. They feel like they're old, slow, think they're good teams.
well, unfortunately for the Saints, I think that was more Mickey Loomis and a business application than it was a football application. And, you get to a point where you're looking down the barrel of some of the other players are going to have to re-sign and where he is. And when players start declining, God knows I wasn't very high when I started my descent, but it was when players start declining, like I blew out my Achilles heel in '87. '88 was not a banner year for me, and then '89 was over. That's what I tell people. There's three things always happen in football. One, you win. 1, 2, you lose, and 3, they tell you can't play no more. So I mean, it's. I think that's the reason Sproles went away. I think the Jenkins decision was one of those deals that probably could have flipped the coin, gone several different ways. But I'm glad for Darren Sproles. I'd like to see people that are good people that have a work ethic and in today's society of the NFL, don't seem to get in any trouble.
How do you view the Ole Miss Alabama game coming up this weekend?
I think Tulane is doing a great job. I think it'll be a great test for Ole Miss, and I think it's. I think it'll be. I have a lot of my friends. I love Ole Miss. Ole Miss was great for me and to me, but I'm kind of living a little more in the real world than a lot of my Ole Miss buddies do, and we might be ranked number 10 in the nation, but that's on paper, and I'm not sure that from what I've seen them play this year on TV, they will have to play an exceptional game to come anywhere close. But hotty toddy, I'm still there for that.
Obviously, you don't have concerns about expressing your opinion, so I want to throw this out at you. The element of surprise on a fake punt is the only thing that's going to allow it to conceivably be successful. Why would you put a gunner in motion when you're going to run a fake punt? And I think that element of surprise surprise is not going to disappear because the linebacker immediately reacted and went out into the flat. So when the Saints do something like that, if it's in their playbook, I agree with what you said before, it should be burned. But to me, it's just like a ludicrous decision to even try that because it eliminates any possibility of success.
Well, I agree with you in theory, but we don't know what, I mean, coaches watch hours and hours of film, and they come up with 2 or 3 different fakes or special plays, not specifically for 4th and 1, but specifically against the team that you're playing. If they give you, if you're in a certain situation in the field versus certain aspect or time of the game versus certain personnel, and then they line up in a certain set, then you're going to run the fake no matter what. Now the design of it, but the point I'm making there is you probably, if you went and talked to Greg McMahon, they saw something in film, and anytime somebody went in motion, they rolled the coverage, or they went a direction and left themselves vulnerable. And that's the only thing I could suppose, but I'm an offensive lineman, so it was 4th and 3, and I wanted to run it right up the middle.
Anyone else?
Thanks a lot.